Hello and welcome to episode 445 of Retro Encounter, RPG fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and listeners, we are closing out our Nintendo November to Remember, our second Zelda month. We did one back in 2018, and the 2024 version had us playing The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past over two separate episodes. This is the second of those episodes, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of negative opinions on this podcast, but we'll try our best anyway. But who's joining me? They are Joshua Lindquist.
Hey, folks.
And Jonathan Logan.
Hello, everyone.
Josh and Jono, we went into it a lot in the previous episode, but all three of us go way back with this game. It was a formative experience for basically all of us. I think all three of us consider this like a signature video game for the Super Nintendo, not just an RPG or RPG adjacent game. And Josh, you said you've played this many, many times over the years, perhaps as often as once per year. And John and I, this is not the second or third time with this game either. Josh, because I know you're sort of one of the Zelda guys on RPG Fan, is this game just as good the 20th plus time around?
Of course.
30th plus time around?
Oh yeah, definitely more than 30 times. I mean, I've played it twice just this year alone.
Yeah, you had your regular replay, and then you weren't anticipating us picking it for Retro Encounter late in the year.
Right. I tend to play it right in January.
Right. But
Bring in the new year.
It doesn't have to be from the second half of the game necessarily. Was there one moment in this in the game playing at this time that maybe surprised you a little bit, or is this basically a solved game for you? Is this just watching your favorite TV series like that you do every year?
So I sort of intentionally gave myself a surprise moment. I didn't mention it on the first half, but I decided to play the Game Boy Advance version that they put on NSO earlier this year. Partially because there's some exclusive stuff that you can unlock with Four Swords, which I did not have time to do because you have to beat Four Swords also.
Yeah, there's like the super spin sort of.
Yeah, you get the Hurricane Spin, which they introduced in the Wind Waker, and then actually they may have introduced it in this game technically. And then there's a new dungeon. So there's a new side quest for the spin and a new dungeon. But you got to beat both games to do that, and I haven't done that yet. But the other thing is there's just little changes. Things like you can
Link's
chop signs down
vocalizations.
now. Yes, he does make sound effects. You can chop signs down. They cut in half, kind of like in Ocarina of Time. That caught me by surprise. But they also changed the Ice Palace. The most notorious puzzle in the Ice Palace is totally different. There's a few rooms of the dungeon that are just different.
Is it the one where you have to sort of walk around in a cycle?
Yes, they simplified it dramatically. It is not nearly as infuriating. So, I knew going into it that I was going to encounter a different puzzle, an easier puzzle, but I was still caught off guard because I just didn't remember it at all. It was not what I remembered.
Here's a question. Fighting against muscle memory, did you find the new puzzle easier or harder than the original?
Oh, for sure easier.
Okay.
Which is what it was intended, right? Because the original Ice Palace block puzzle at the end, where you drop the block into the hole, is one of the only times in the game where a change in one room affects another room on a different floor, no less. But also you have to find a crystal switch and go around you can just get lost. It feels like you run through the whole dungeon 2 more times, right?
I don't mind going right into this because I remember finding this very frustrating. I had a vague idea of what I had to do because I have played this game many times. I don't want to attach a number to it, but this is probably at least the 6th time I've played Link to the Past. But I was struggling going back and forth to the beginning of the dungeon but then sort of realized, okay, this is the only place where I can hit a blue-red switch. So I sort of figured out I had to hit the switch and then go from 12 o'clock to 11 o'clock clockwise on this one specific floor of the dungeon. It was annoying, but I refigured it out. But is the changed puzzle just like adding one more switch in an easy to find place or something?
Basically, yes. So instead, you go down. You do still go down to where that last room is, where you would previously have just found a pot with a switch under it that you couldn't do anything with. Um, and they've totally changed that room, and now there's a room off to the right with a crystal switch in it. You hit
Hmm.
that switch and you
Ah,
go back upstairs, but you still can't get to where you need to go. They've done away with pushing blocks into a hole. Instead, it's a hole that you have to fall into.
oh,
And you still have to go around in a circle to get back, but it's a very straightforward circle, and you go through a few rooms, and some of those rooms you're actually going through for the first time. So it doesn't even really feel like backtracking, other than maybe walking through 2 or 3 rooms that you'd already been in.
so you still have to bomb the floor, but you don't need to push the block down.
It's not even bombing the floor. It's one of those the big blocks that you like pick up in Thieves Town earlier.
Oh,
You just pick that up and it reveals a hole in the middle of the room, and you fall down and it takes you to the boss, basically,
Hmm.
or to
all
the
right. Well,
room right before the boss. So it's much simpler.
I did have a minor struggle with that this time around. Um, I don't know if I'd call it a surprise moment for me though. John, same question to you. I mean, you've played this game several times. Was
Hmm.
there something about this playthrough in 2024 that surprised you, even though we've been playing this game for 30 years?
Yeah. One thing that I guess surprised me. It didn't. Okay, this didn't surprise me, but it drew my attention is just how many items are in this game that are not required or in some cases useful. Uh, like you can fully beat this game without ever using the cape, for example. It's like there are bonuses, like there are, yeah, if you want full exploration, you have to use some of these items, and that's interesting, but like you don't need to. And that's actually not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It provides so much extra texture to the game and like options to play and various styles of play.
I think
Um
Josh, you did tell me this. I don't know if it was on the last week's episode or if it was off air, but there's like one heart piece that the cape is required for,
Yes,
and
just one.
yeah, and it's not even far from where you find the cape. It's over sort of over in uh um over in by Dark Sanctuary, if you want to call it that.
Yes,
But
exactly. Yeah.
if there's I mean if there's an item that I think is maybe even slightly less useful, it might be the Bombos medallion,
yeah, you
because
just
Hmm.
don't need it.
you
You
don't
don't
really
need it.
need that. You don't really need it for anything. It is an instant kill for a lot of enemies. I think it's basically a fire rod shot
For
to the
cold
whole
stare, it's an
screen.
instant melt.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
Mhm.
Oh, that's
Well,
something.
I
But
learned
but
something
yeah,
new.
like it, there is a lot of if not unnecessary, there's a lot of items in this game, but you really feel like you're mostly using your core 4 or 5. I completely forget about the Book of Medora, and except when I need to find Ether and Bombos.
Right, and it's like, yeah, the other 2 medallions you at least have to use to get into dungeons, but Bombos you don't need at all. It's just for fun. And honestly, I would basically always use Ether over Bombos, because you can smash frozen things with the hammer
Yep.
to get like magic increases again,
Yeah, it's
or
very high
drops.
chance for either a
Hmm.
small magic meter or a full magic vase. Yeah.
So I use the Ether medallion a lot, especially in like Ganon's Tower during some of those final rooms of they're just rooms full of enemies. Um,
Mhm.
because you can just kill them all in one hit and refill your magic and go to the next room.
I use them I use ether for probably the same reason you do. And there's a couple invisible floor spaces in Ganon's
Yep.
tower
Hmm.
where you can if you light a flame, that'll conveniently illuminate them, but if a flame's out of reach, I usually use ether, which will make the whole screen flash and see where the invisible blocks are for at least a
Yep.
few seconds. Uh and it also usually conveniently freezes the enemies around, so I can use I can get a free refill off of them. But let's just jump right into the Dark World. We left off the previous episode with the reveal of the Dark World. After you defeat Aghanim in Hyrule Castle, you're cast into the Dark World, and by talking to some NPCs and perhaps also some Sahasrara telepathic tiles, uh, basically this world is a parallel to Hyrule that was created when Ganondorf sees the Triforce for himself, but like it won't become the true world until Ganondorf like captures the descendants of the Seven Sages and defeats the hero, because they need. This is my maybe me reading a bit too extra into it, but they sort of need power, wisdom, and courage, and not just power to to like have the world reflect what you want. Is that vaguely true? Because the final battle against Ganon does seem to me that he needs to defeat you to complete his conquest, and you need to defeat him to like restore the world to the true light world. But
Restore the Golden Realm.
right. But basically, that's not immediately clear. You're dropped into the dark world and have to sort of struggle around enemies dealing way more damage to you with regular hits. It probably almost feels like you stepped into hell the first time you do it, because like there's bomb throwing cyclops at me, and a regular little plant thing takes away 2 hearts, and I hate it here. But and progress is gated a little bit sensibly. And there's ways to break this order, I know, but generally speaking, they want you to do the Palace of Darkness first, which is Dungeon 1. That gives you the hammer that unlocks a lot of other parts of the map for you. And then in the next 3 dungeons, you get the hookshot, the fire rod, and the titan mitt. And with those 3 plus the hammer, that sort of unlocks the last parts of the map for you. And you can do the last 3, the ice palace, the Misery Mire, and Turtle Rock, in whatever order, because the items found in there aren't really crucial for most of the rest of the world navigation. But they sort of want you to do Turtle Rock last because you need the Cane of Samaria for that. But basically, they nudge you into doing the 7 dungeons here in a certain order, but you do have a lot of freedom once you have that hammer from the first dungeon. And you can really like explore this world anew, and for the first time, other than 30 seconds on Death Mountain in part 1, like mess around with switching between light world and dark world to see how the world changes as you swap between the parallels to unlock more secrets that way. So like you're allowed to explore this new world and also reinterpret the world of the first half of the game in new ways, because of the world interactivity and because of the new items that you unlock in the first couple of dungeons, and it's super fun. We just did a Legend of Zelda draft episode a couple weeks ago, and the hookshot, or a version of the hookshot, was the #1 draft pick because it's one of the most satisfying weapons or items that Zelda games have ever introduced. And if a game doesn't have a hookshot, I'm frankly a little disappointed. I'm not. I can hardly think of one without a hook shot, but I'm sure there are some out there. But
Breath of the
like,
Wild.
you know, I
Tears of
think
the Kingdom.
Breath of the Wild allows you some creative exploratory freedom in other ways. So I'll let that one slide. But generally speaking, like if you thought you had freedom in the first part of the game, you get more tastes of that sort of true nonlinearity at the level of Zelda 1 with part 2. This is sort of the game I think that established the formula that a huge number of Zeldas followed. In fact, almost most of them followed, where you explore the world, uncover dungeons, and then the key item in each dungeon is a gimmick that unlocks more of the world. And I mean, Josh, I know this is very, very reductive, but like the loop of going through a dungeon and finding the next dungeon in a Link to the Past feels like almost every Zelda game up to Breath of the Wild feels like it inhabits a similar loop. And again, I know that's too reductive, but what A Link to the Past does, especially in its second half, feels like it is a relative peak of what Zelda was in 1991, 92, and they have been revisiting that formula and that peak ever since. Am I completely talking out my ass here, or is this the second half of A Link to the Past as special as I feel it is?
No, I think you're completely right. I don't even think it's reductive. I mean, and there's a strong argument to make that the moment they changed the dungeon formula and took those items out of the dungeon in Breath of the Wild, a significant chunk of the Zelda fan base kind of complained and said, "Where are our dungeon items? Where, like, or even just where are the dungeons? These aren't dungeons anymore." So, yeah, like I think it kind of is or had been a core part of the Zelda just formula for decades. And yeah, it definitely started here. It started here in a meaningful way, right? Zelda 1 has items in dungeons, but not that feel necessary to complete the dungeon or even necessary to uh, traverse the world when you get out. They're just a lot of them are just kind of fun toys, right? You don't need the magic wand to beat the game at all.
I mean, clearly when they made Zelda 1, there was not like this was not on their minds, but like I think of Zelda 1 almost as a prototype and Link to the Past as the equivalent of a V1. Like this is the first Zelda and everything after this is iterating on this particular perfected quote unquote formula. Up until of course they broke the whole thing with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree. Like the dungeon design is very experimental. They did maybe I don't want to say they got lazy, but they got a bit like they stuck to a closer formula on dungeon designs and future games where you kind of had a few different types of dungeons and you could kind of say, "Oh, this one is very focused on combat. This one has like a puzzle box. I have to like figure out how this central room works." Or this one has a bunch of wings off to the side. You don't really see dungeons like Skull Woods, for example, in many other Zelda games where you go out into the overworld repeatedly,
It's
fall
pretty
down
cool.
different holes. Like it almost doesn't feel like a dungeon, right? Because it feels like you're just falling into the basement of the forest repeatedly, and they don't do stuff like that very much in games after this. And so, like, there's a few more things where it's just more experimental, and they kind of maybe took a step away from that more often than not in the later Zelda games. Um, but yeah, the core pieces were all kind of put together here, and I would say maybe refined a bit with Link's Awakening and Ocarina of Time, but certainly by like the year 2000, right? By
Mm.
Majora's Mask and the Wind Waker, it was pretty solidified what a Zelda dungeon was.
Yeah, and I mean, for many many years, I would sometimes like rate Zelda games by their dungeons. I sort of like Oracle of Ages more than Oracle of Seasons because I think the dungeons are better.
Mhm.
I wish Wind Waker had more dungeons, even though that's an excellent, excellent game. I think that Twilight Princess has great dungeons, and sort of it's the rest of the game that makes that one that takes off points off that one for me personally. Like a Zelda dungeon is such a specific thing, and A Link to the Past gave us uh 11 or 12 really good ones. Depends on what you count Hyrule Castle as. It really did feel like they established a formula in this and even experimented within this own game because we even talked about it last episode. Hera's Tower sort of explores the verticality of this new system, and the Desert Palace sort of is a wheel and spoke, only one floor for a while. A Link to the Past formula for both nonlinear exploration and dungeoneering established what a Zelda world and dungeons were for years and years to come. And even though there were a lot of variation and experimentation over those many years, I do not want to understate how influential this game was. Like for the first time, they nailed what a Zelda game was because I mean, I have my problems with Zelda 1 and 2, but I have so many fewer problems with the core design of A Link to the Past.
One of the things I really like about the dungeons of Link to the Past, especially the dungeons in the Dark World, is how many of them have a puzzle that you need to solve before you can even get into the dungeons, whether that be the monkey at Pod or I think the best puzzle in the game, in my opinion, and my favorite as a kid even is Swamp Palace. And like, well, how the hell do I get up there? How do and you have to go into the light world and you need to drain the dam and then you need to go back to the dark world and all of a sudden now it's flooded. I think that's such genius. It's such a good puzzle.
And I think they hint at it. There's a sort of flooded area you can't cross if you enter in there when the water is still full. But there's a Sahasrara tile that
Hmm.
says, "Hey, sometimes these worlds are connected, and sometimes changing something in the light world will affect the dark world." Like it's something vague like that.
Yeah, it's such a good callback too, because this is something that you probably did in like the first 5 to 10 minutes of once you explored Hyrule, the Light World at the beginning of the game. So you haven't thought about this for God, probably a couple hours at this point, and then it just comes back, and that's so smart.
And hey, from Ocarina of Time water temples to Skies of Arcadia first dungeons to a dungeon in Metaphor Fantasio earlier this year, I've played many video games where you drain water or or flood areas to change how you navigate them.
Mhm.
Uh, Do you think that's your favorite dungeon overall, Jono, in part two, or
No,
is it just that opening gimmick?
oh, it's just that opening gimmick. What is my favorite? What is my favorite dungeon overall in this game? That's a good question. I like Thieves Town a lot, actually.
I also love Thieves Town. I sort of like the change made to Thieves Town and A Link Between Worlds more. We're not here to talk about that game, but um, like Thieves Town being this sort of chaotic enemies everywhere thing. It doesn't have a lot of puzzles in it, but the
Except for
central
that one
puzzle,
big one.
except the one big one that sort of defines the whole dungeon. You don't meet a girl in a crystal at first. You just meet her in a cell at the end. Um, and but then if you like bomb the floor a couple places, you can and you walk into a lit area with her, she turns into Blind the Thief. But if you
Mhm.
go to like, but there's even near the beginning of the game, I think it's someone in the prison in Kakariko Village says, "Oh yeah, there was a thief named Blind that hated bright lights that used to live here," and
Yeah,
it like
lore.
it yeah, exactly. It's a they're paying off something that they set up hours earlier in the game, and everyone loves a callback.
I like the idea that I know the sprite is just of a maiden and it's fine, but I've always liked the headcanon that it's just blind in a wig and it's just Link doesn't even notice. Like it's just a horrible costume that barely works. And Link's like, huh, whatever, let's go.
Like this is the worst production of Twelfth Night I've ever seen in my life.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's not as explicit as some later Zelda games. Like, I mean, I just played Echoes of Wisdom a month ago, and there's almost like a sort of riddle or a mini side quest you have to do before every dungeon to sort of get to the dungeon and discover it properly. And they don't have that level here, but they do like in the second half of the game, every dungeon has sort of a gimmick to locate it, uh, a first half to navigate it until you find the key item, and then a second half where the key item recontextualizes the rest of the dungeon. I mean, maybe not in the Ice Palace because the item that you get there is just better armor, which is very welcome, but not necessarily required for beating the dungeon. And oh, I don't know. I'm going back to that question that I asked you guys earlier. What something that surprised me of this game? I did use a fairy a couple times to revive. I think I finished the game with 3 deaths, which is a little bit annoying because I think it counts a fairy revival as a death. Uh,
Yeah, that was an interesting change I saw in the Game Boy Advance version. Actually, the SNES version, it counts it counts games played, and I think that counts fairies. But it also even like counts if you save and quit the game entirely.
oh,
It like
really?
saves that as
That's
a
why.
game played. Um,
Interesting.
in the
That's
Game Boy Advance
strange.
version, it counts lives properly. So I did use a
Okay.
few fairies, basically on bosses, playing kind of sloppily, whatever. And it said I died 0 times at the end. And I was a little bit thrown off by that.
Mine said I died 3 times at the end, but but I definitely used fairies at least twice, and I definitely save and quit the game at least a couple times.
What was what
But
were your favorite bosses? Out of curiosity, just like playing it through this time.
well, b- uh, before we go there, I do want to talk
Okay.
about my least favorite boss. I don't know why, but ever since I was a child, I hate Mothula. In the in Skullwoods. It's the third. It's not the hardest boss in the game. I know it's not that hard with Fire Rod, but for some reason it's just it's the moth. He's shooting at you. There's conveyor belts and spikes moving along it. It's just so much going on at once. I always die at least once and use a fairy to Mothula. I think that has been true of me forever. It is just the game. I mean, to a degree, a lot of 2D Zelda games are basically shmups where you have to navigate, squares in a specific way to and your defense is moving to avoid projectiles and enemies, and your offense is getting your hits in at the right time. For some reason, I lose the shmup every time I play Mothula and have to use a fairy. I think that has been true of me for 30 years or however long I've been playing this game.
It's by far
No,
the most chaotic fight in the game, I think.
for sure. Yeah. No, I mean I generally agree. It's not a very creative boss design, right? It is like the shmup comparison is apt. Like it is just kind of a let's just throw everything at them and see if they can hit this flying moth thing.
Yeah,
And
yes. Some parts of old Zelda are schmuppier than others. but this is like a very schmuppy part of A Link to the Past, and I think I might have invented a new adjective there, but I'm not going to do the hard research to figure if that's true or not.
I do like the idea though that Mothula's entire battle, it's so chaotic and everything. I Unlike every other boss in the game, Mothula never struck me as particularly malicious. I just feel like it's a moth caught in a dark room with Link, and Link's just afraid of moths, and the moth's afraid of Link, and they're just kind of like freaking the out because they're stuck in this room with spikes flying at each other.
I thought moths were supposed to like fire. Well,
No, moth.
I guess it does harm them, but you know.
I mean, that would have been an interesting mechanic if they could have programmed it into the game where you'd like need to light a torch to get Mothula to settle the hell down for a
Oh
bit.
yeah, maybe there's a big torch, and if you light it, then Mothula will go and get and sort of hover around it. Oh, that see, you're already like solving a design problem from 33 years ago.
That seems like a later Zelda boss though, like that idea.
Well, and when Nintendo had a chance to redesign Mothula, they instead just deleted Mothula and put a different boss in that dungeon instead in A Link Between Worlds.
There is a much easier version of Mothula in Oracle of Seasons. I think the dungeon is even called Poison Moth Lair or
Yes,
something.
that's right.
Yep. But that thing is that's not the Mothula that terrorized my childhood.
No, that is a moth-shaped black and white sprite that you just hit really fast with your sword and it dies.
Yeah. Again, I think the dungeons in Ages are considerably better than the dungeons in Seasons. Yeah, I got my couple minutes of complaining about Mothula. That would is there a favorite or least favorite boss that you guys encounter in this game? To bringing it back to Jono's question that I immediately shoved off the rails.
For me, I think my favorite boss in the entire game is Helmasaur King.
Yep.
I love Helmasaur King. First off, again, thinking back to being very young and my experience being entirely the NES and moving to the Super Nintendo, it's just like, oh my god, he's so huge. Like he's just the sprite is like half of the screen, and that is so impressive for the time. Now it's nothing. Back then it was like, holy crap. It's a really good use of the dungeon item, and even after you use the dungeon item properly and you shatter his mask, he's still, you still have to go after him. I just think it's a really fun, interesting, striking looking boss. I think it's one of the best bosses in the game. I think it's a great way to introduce you to the dark world and just be like, all right, we're not screwing around anymore. This is hard now.
Also, I love that. I love the hammer for its naked simplicity. It's not called the magic hammer or the super hammer. It's just a hammer. But when you start hammering enemies and smashing iced enemies for magic or hammering in stakes, it's a very satisfying but very simple item. I respect the hammer.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add, I think the Palace of Darkness is my favorite dungeon in the Dark World, maybe in the whole game. Maybe followed closely by Misery Mire. I really like that kind of maze-like mess that it is. But I like the Palace of Darkness. I think Helmasaur King is in the running for best boss. I also really like Trinex in Turtle Rock. And what I like about both of those bosses is, like, we're talking about the hammer and breaking off his mask. You can use bombs also, but that's kind of hard mode. Uh, I like that you really use the items, and in Trinex you bring the fire and ice rods, and it's just kind of you see the beginning of what became what Zelda bosses are, right? Where you use the item to weaken them to find their weak point, essentially. And both of those bosses, when you do that, it's very visual, right? Like Trinex just explodes, and Helmasaur King's mask just shatters.
Yeah, both of those bosses have a very clear phase 1 and phase 2 that are unlocked with specific items. Yeah.
Pod also has, I think, a really cool moment in the game. It's the first collapsing bridge, which is such a cool moment when
I
you're
love
crossing.
that room.
You're like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap.
Yeah, I'm kind of maybe crazy, but I actually really like Zelda dungeons where they just kind of say, "Here's a mess of keys. Find all of the keys that you need." And so, as a kid, I quickly memorized where all of those keys are in Palace of Darkness, and so I just really enjoy, like, at the very beginning, just running around, go in like the optimal path to get all of the keys as quickly as possible, and then it's almost like the dungeon's over at that point. You just go through all the locked doors.
Oh man, I mean that reminds me. In Link's Awakening, there's a dungeon called Key Cavern
Uh huh.
where I think there's a whole bunch of keys in it. I don't know the exact number, but the last puzzle is, hey, here's a corridor with 4 keyholes in it that you just have
Yeah.
to blaze through. But they give you an extra key in that dungeon,
And then you're like, what is
and
this for?
yeah, as a kid, when I was sort of exploring the hell of that game, I was looking for the missing door for that last key for hours, but I don't know. I didn't have great internet access at that time, but yeah, whatever. I like Zelda keys and keyholes and big keys and that whole design loop. I enjoy those too, but sometimes I mean it's like when you get one of those impossible puzzles that are edgeless and have 5 that don't fit anywhere. It's like oh man, this is unnecessarily stressful.
I understand why it was frustrating, but I mean, I imagine that it was to prevent frustration in their minds because there are so many keys, and like if you were just couldn't find that last one.
Yeah, they're helping you with that extra key in Key Cavern, but I just I don't know.
Oh, I totally understand.
It did not sit well with me that that there was a key without a lock. But I mean I'm with you on the Palace of Darkness being really really good. It almost feels like an upgraded version of Eastern Palace
Well, I mean, it
because
starts the exact
Yes.
same,
yeah, well,
Yep.
correct.
which is
Yeah,
brilliant.
the opening hall is the same, and it is multi-floor and sort of directs you in certain ways, but you have to sort of interact with every system you've interacted with thus far in the game to navigate it. In A Link Between Worlds, the Palace of Darkness is a bomb-centric puzzle dungeon where there's a lot of bomb throwing and bomb positioning and lighting and letting torches fall to they actually play with darkness a little bit more in Link Between Worlds, but every version of this dungeon's a good dungeon. I remember hating Turtle Rock as a child, mostly because I would run out of magic potion.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
I think I didn't. I think the first time I played the game, I didn't even have the half cost magic meter, which you get from using magic powder on a statue in the Dark World.
No,
Magic
no,
Uh,
no,
hat, yeah.
no. It's in the light world. But yeah,
oh, it's in the light world, but you need the Titan mitt to get to it. Yeah, that's
you
probably
need
right. That's
the
probably right.
hammer to get to it in the light world.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
right
r-
beside the
it's right.
blacksmith's
It's up
yes,
shop.
by
but
the
yeah,
blacksmith's house. Yeah.
yes, it is by the. We're thinking of the same thing. I just
Yeah.
had the detail.
Yeah. I
I just
know
had the
what you're
details
talking
wrong.
about. Yeah.
But I did not have that when I first played this game 30 years ago. And but now it's just a matter of course. It's like, oh yeah, for any dungeon where I need to use a lot of magic, I better have that thing. Um,
Yeah. I know that I don't actually need 4 fairies anymore, so I usually just carry a blue potion with me just in case. And even then, I
Hmm.
don't need it most of the time. But like Turtle Rock, right? The Early on, there's a puzzle where you have to light 4 torches without a door shutting on you. And
yes,
as a kid, it drove me mad.
I did not like that as a kid. There's a
Ye-
couple of those. There's even one of those in the Ice Palace where you have to sort of just like sprint or through. Or actually, no,
Oh
I'm sorry.
yeah,
It's
Ganon's tower. Yeah.
yeah, Ganon's Tower. Yeah, I think the tile set looked similar. But yeah, there's a couple of those in Ganon's Tower that are frustrating to deal with as well. But as a kid, not having the half cost magic and being frustrated by these things was maddening to me. And that
oh,
leads me to another tangent, I guess. I mean, I've played this game multiple times, and even when I forget dungeon layouts or don't remember where everything is. Like I'll play the game and it'll feel familiar, and the muscle memory will return, or I'll have a vague idea of what I'm supposed to do at all times. But um, there were some things the first time I played this game that were definitely told to me, and I didn't discover for myself. And I have to wonder how hard that must have been for someone in, say, 1992, because like they don't really tell you about the Quake medallion. You have to explore that one part of the map where Zora's Falls is in the light world and get that Quake medallion, but you need the Quake medallion to enter Turtle Rock, and or even the final boss, like to defeat the final version of Ganon. You have to hit him with your sword a whole bunch of times, and then for the final phase, hitting him with your sword puts him in a stun state, and you need to use silver arrows to deal damage. and those silver arrows are from an upgraded bow that you get from buying a super bomb from the bomb shop and taking it to the giant cracked wall in the pyramid. And I'm sure all of us saw that cracked wall the like within 15 seconds of visiting the dark world for the first time. But but still, like, that seems like a lot of hoops that aren't very well explained, because I mean, I was paying attention this time. I don't think they tell you that you need silver arrows to beat Ganon. I just knew. Is any of this communicated, or am I really missing something?
It's my understanding that there's a telepathic tile in the room below the Ganon boss fight. So if Ganon knocks you off and you fall down a hole, it's my understanding there's a tile there that gives you the hint about the silvers. But I
Right,
mean,
yeah, he does blow holes at the edge of the room where you fight him. Right,
yeah,
right.
but don't quote me on that because again, it's just the kind of thing like, yeah, you kill Ganon with the silvers. Everyone knows that. How does everyone know that? Yeah,
I think it was
like
like, oh yeah, you get the fourth bottle by taking the chest down to the thief in the desert, and like just and oh, you can
yeah.
get the golden sword by with the bomb shop thing, but you need to do that, only appears after you've beaten the ice palace and Misery Mire. It's like things that I definitely did not discover on my own, but it felt like I've always known them.
So I can add here something here. Sorry, I kind of was looking this up because we were thinking about it. There are hints that we've all a little bit forgotten about. There are fortune tellers in the game who will drop
Right.
Oh, those scam artists.
a bunch of hints that will actually tell you things. And I thought they might, so that's why I looked them up. One of the fortune tellers will tell you need the silver arrows. They don't tell you how to get the silver arrows.
There's one in the light world and one in the dark world, right? But they're not
Yeah,
exactly the same
they will
location.
also they tell you that there is something inside the pyramid, but they don't tell you what. And they tell you that you need silver arrows, but they don't tell you where. In the dark world, there are also storytellers that you can pay to tell you stories. Um, One of those storytellers will tell you that uh, in order that there is a fairy basically living in the pyramid, but you can't get in there with a normal bomb. Uh, and they will tell you about the circle of stones that you throw stuff into for the Quake Medallion.
Okay, so there are breadcrumbs to the Quake medallion
If you
somewhere.
just go talking to all the NPCs and pay them money, yes.
Hmm.
which
Alternatively,
no
you
one is doing, right? It's not great breadcrumbs.
There's a lot of ways to get rupees in this game. I did have 999 rupees, or I
Yeah.
think around Turtle Rock Zone. So for Turtle Rock this time around, I think I just had 4 blue potions because I could afford them. But yeah, okay. So I don't remember talking to those NPCs when I first played this game. I
For
felt
sure.
like this
Yeah.
was a game that my friends were talking about, that a lot of them had already played, because I got a Super Nintendo slightly late in 94 or 95. So a lot of this was just told to me and I accepted it, and that's fine. But still, it's like it's very it must have been a different experience playing this when it came out, if you didn't have that community or the internet or similar.
feel like this game and Nintendo, obviously nowadays it's completely different, but especially back then they were just starting to get away from the we need to sell Nintendo players guides mentality, and we need to put some puzzles in the game that are real difficult to solve unless they buy a Nintendo's players guide.
Yeah, yeah, that's the same kind of thinking that was like, we need to make arcade games super hard so people will
Hmm.
blow as many quarters as possible.
Yeah, let's get as much play value out of this game as we possibly can. Um, but you're right, like some of these puzzles are difficult to parse and they're just like, why is that? That doesn't make any sense. Who would ever figure that out? And the answer is, 8-year-old children in 1992, because this game was played a lot. I played so much of this game as a kid, and the funny thing is I was having such a great time with it. Even like nowadays, if I play Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, I am heading towards a goal. I'm like, okay, I need to beat the game. Back in those days, it was just cool to like plug the game in and just like wander around Hyrule and have explore, kill some monsters, talk to some NPCs, that kind of thing. Like it was a different kind of way to play the game as a child, at least for me.
and I mean it's such a more beautifully realized world than Zelda 1 is. And it has a lot of action and danger, but also a lot of NPCs and coziness. It really is a remarkable thing that they made
Hmm.
in the early 90s, that and Zelda is on the short list of most popular video game series in the world. And the fact that the third one still feels this good to play and is so revered is it's so remarkable.
It's and there was so many secrets in this game that you could just stumble on, and when you figure them out, you feel so great, especially if you figure them out without a player's guide. Like, I think figuring out how to get the tempered sword is such an awesome feeling in this game, and like putting together like, oh, where's the smith? Oh, who's this frog? Okay, like what do I have to do here? Why is the frog following me? Where do I take this stupid frog? And like putting it together and realizing, okay, and then you get the tempered sword, and all of a sudden, those monsters that were bothering you at the very beginning outside of the pyramid, Sollosi, they're not bothering you anymore.
Oh yeah, when you have the blue armor and the red or golden sword, you really do feel like you have leveled up, even
Hmm.
though this game does not have experience points. But they like and we're commenting on how so many this game has so many items and not all of them are useful. Uh, but I mean, they give you enough tools to play with that you feel very powerful by game's end.
Yeah, and like going back to Jono's point, like I do very distinctly remember as a kid just running around Kakariko Village using all the cool tools I had, right? It's like I don't need to use the medallions to kill the guards patrolling Kakariko Village, right?
No, but
Or the,
you're gonna ether and then hammer all of them because it's just
exactly.
fun.
And or to use the cane of burner, right, and just watch them try and hit you and they can't touch you. Um, I also loved the game doesn't really register depth properly, so you can swim over to the big white bridge, and there's a little patch of water you can stand on, and you can just like lob the ice rod or shoot arrows at the guards on the bridge from below. And I used to just sit there and kill them over and over and over again in whatever various ways. Uh, it's like
That's
you
such a
definitely,
petulant child thing to
yeah.
do.
And but it is like they give you a really cool toolkit to just mess around and have fun in the world. I mean, you don't. Yeah, nowadays I tend to just kill everything with the sword real fast. I'll just charge up a spin attack and wipe out all the guards in one go. But back then it was fun to just play with all of the tools. And I always had to rush and make sure I had the cane of Burna and that I had the medallions because I needed them, obviously, to blow up the city guards.
And I know that like if you give dedicated game players time with a game that's very loved, they will find every way to break that game or waste time in that game. I mean, there's communities of, you know, of speed running and making musical instruments in Breath of the Wild and or Tears of the Kingdom and Minecraft and things like that. Like they will, like, people will find ways to be very very silly or incredible ways to waste time in games like these. And again, A Link to the Past is just so far ahead of its time and is such a fully realized world. It's just fun messing around in it. And I think probably I'm very very objective driven as a player of RPGs in my late 30s. But I was playing this game to sort of just get to the end and talk about it on the podcast. But it's just fun zapping things with the ice rod and then melting them with the fire rod, and when your magic gets low, using the hammer instead. It's just uh, from the big dungeoneering ideas to the very very minute silly things you can do with these powerful weapons. This game's just great.
What you were saying about like glitches and stuff like that, as I understand it, this is a deeply broken game in so many ways. Like there are so many ways to break it, and I think one of the, uh, I mean, in speedrunning in this game, the probably one of the most popular ones is fake flippers, where if you go to a place where there's water and there's a way to jump into the water and it's right at the edge of the screen. If you jump off the ledge into the water and you hit left right as soon as you hit the water, you'll transition to the next screen and the game will just assume that you have flippers. So things like that. are really cool. And hang on, what is the guy's name? Oh, you would know, Josh.
The Chris Houlihan room.
Yeah, Chris
Yeah.
Houlihan room.
This sounds like something I would watch a video of and have fun doing, but would never try to explore for myself because that just I don't that's just not how my brain's wired. I was like I just want to fight the bosses and get the items.
Yeah,
Is it good or
there's like
bad that I knew what room you were talking about the moment you just said, Josh? You probably know what this is.
no, it's great. But apparently, it is actually a security measure, or not a
Yeah,
security measure. It's if
it's like a
Link
fail
somehow,
safe. Yeah,
it's a fail safe that if the game loses track of Link and doesn't know where he is when he jumps into a hole, you just load into the Chris Houlihan room,
and get
so
a
the
bunch
game
of
just
free
doesn't
money.
break.
Yep.
Yeah,
Uh,
apparent the lore goes that Nintendo Power had a competition,
yeah.
and the grand prize was that whoever won it would get their name into the game, and it's Chris Houlihan. Who the hell knows who Chris Houlihan is? But he is immortalized in this game
Yeah.
forever. That is an awesome prize.
I have read stories the Chris Houlihan story before, and I mean especially for a game of this magnitude to be the thing that you get that you know get to be immortalized in is pretty impressive.
Mm,
Yeah,
I,
my favorite. It's not even really a glitch necessarily. Isn't even useful. Um, it was just a thing that people kind of talked about until we could actually rip the game apart and figure out what was going on. They called it the Ghost of Misery Mire. Uh,
mhm,
there is one of the enemies basically in the swamp doesn't have a sprite, and so if you use a medallion to kill everything on the screen, you will see like an invisible enemy get killed. And so everyone was just like, "What is it?" And I believe it turned out to just be another Zora or something, right? It's
mm,
nothing really all that interesting. It just the game partially loads it basically, and it's just not there. The rest of it, there's no sprite, and I don't even think it has collision. It's just you can kill it accidentally. So I always thought that one was fun because I had killed it accidentally. Me and my obsessive
mm.
medallion using usage.
What One of my favorite things about video games, as compared to literally every other artistic medium, is just how much developers like shove crap to like just under the first layer of the graphics or like off to the left of the screen, and it's just, no one is ever going to see it. And I love that. Like whenever you look at a cutscene, especially in modern day games, and it's like when the character is not on screen, they're just T-posing or they're like bouncing along without any movement, and it looks very very funny. It always amuses me that it is so much based on the presentation, and there is so much going on behind the scenes of developers just like Rube Goldberg machining their way to just make it work. It doesn't matter. No one's going to see it anyway.
Yeah, and really some of these older games too are it's kind of technically impressive when you start to realize how like how do cutscenes or cinematics work in NES games part of the time.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like some of it's really creative solutions to how they were able to do storytelling and stuff with very limited technology. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah, and even some things like just dialogue and translations, like things that we think of as iconic video game lines were written as such only because they had a very specific number of characters that they had to fill with each text box. It's such a different environment because developing in the 8 to 16-bit era was about the limitations of the technology and squeezing as much as you can out of limited technology. And now games will have budgets in the in possibly nine figures that are about just pushing the limits and putting as much as you can in and making things as photorealistic or beautiful as possible. But I mean, I don't think A Link to the Past had a budget of $100 million, but it still looks and plays amazing for in 2024. That I don't know. I almost wish that they're like. I mean, the game industry is going through turmoil and restructuring right now. I almost wish that part of that restructuring would be game budgets lowering a little bit to get more of the artistic expression from my favorite eras of video games. But okay, that's an entirely different
that's a
podcast
different
topic.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true though. Like I feel like Miyamoto, like a lot of his games, especially back in the SNES era, like I feel like if he actually asked Nintendo for money, they'd be like, "You want money? What are you talking about? Games don't cost money."
I did want to point out a few just kind of highlights, like kind of talking about their game design, right? I know we want to talk about the story soon. But we've been talking about
Do
the
we though?
dungeons. We were talking about the dungeons and stuff, and just some of the things they did that I think people just don't really maybe don't appreciate as much nowadays, right? We talked about the Ice Palace having that crazy block puzzle like at the very beginning of the show, but the and I briefly touched on Skull Woods, right? Being like you don't even know you're going in a dungeon, right? You just kind of
Mm,
accidentally fall into it. Um, but Misery Mire also has the puzzle where you have to light the torches that are in different rooms,
mm.
uh, which can really throw you off because there are, again, not very many times in the game where things remain permanent once you leave a space. But I really love Misery Mire for it. And also for just how much of Misery Mire, Skull Woods, and some of the others too, like how much of the dungeons are optional. Like you don't have to go in every room or solve every puzzle. There's just a lot of optional places. Uh, Probably the best example of like intentional optional places is actually Ganon's Tower because there are two paths. And it's really easy to get lost and think you have to do all of it, but you don't. At the beginning, there's three doors. The one in the middle is to go up the tower once you have your big key, but the two on the left and right go to the same floor. And you can take the left path around or the right path around. And you kind of get to choose your own way through the dungeon.
I remember getting stuck in one of those paths because I couldn't figure out how to get across a pit that didn't have a hook shot widget at the end, so I ended up going back and going the other way instead.
The invisible bridge, yeah.
There's a and oh yeah, there's an invisible bridge. Great. But the and I remember thinking there was also an unnecessary key that's just going between one path to the other.
Mm.
That
And
you,
Yes.
there's
that
all
you,
that stupid teleportation puzzle
oh
maze, the
man.
teleportation
Yes.
maze. Oh,
And yeah, like I've maybe picked up a good habit from playing Zelda 1 too many times, but I don't open key locks unless I must, right?
No,
And Ganon's
I'm the
Tower is
opposite.
a
If I
good
have a key and I see a lock, that key is going in
yeah.
that lock.
And in Ganon's Tower you are rewarded for not doing that because you can just
mm.
hang on to keys and not have to do the whole dungeon. You can just kind of take a quick path through.
Teleporter
That
puzzles don't bother me anymore because the teleporter puzzle at the end of Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne is so heinous that every other one just seems like Kirby 1-1 in comparison.
one of my favorite things. It's interesting that you mentioned the basement, the two paths in the basement, Josh, because in whenever someone's doing a randomizer race, uh,
Oh,
that basement has taken on entirely new meanings because there can be somebody who is like, I don't know, 2 minutes ahead of the other person, and that basement makes all the difference because it, everything's randomized, including location of
yeah.
the key. So
Hmm.
when you go into Ganon's tower, if someone is 2 minutes behind, you can choose: do you go left or do you go right? And if someone goes left instead of right, and they find the key first, holy crap! Like that just changes the entire nature of the race. Like in the last 10 minutes of the game, which
Right.
is such a cool, obviously gameplay decision that the developers did not intend because they certainly didn't mean for this to be a randomizer. But it's fascinating how years later these decisions can take on entirely new meanings and these design choices.
And it makes it's better for it, right? It's like
Yeah.
the idea that Nintendo will ever like officially sanction a randomizer mode in a Zelda game is probably a pipe dream. But
I mean, there is one in Cadence of Hyrule.
I think the ultimate
okay.
Zelda. I think the ultimate Zelda pipe dream is a Zelda Maker in the style of Mario Maker, which
Yeah.
which would be incredible, but it would require a tremendous amount of effort on Nintendo's part that I'm not sure they're willing to do.
The word is
Also,
from interviews that Echoes of Wisdom at least partially started as that again. They were trying and they quit and made a
Oh,
different game instead, which
oh,
is
that's
maybe why you can
exciting.
place objects around the world, right? You can see
mm,
how that was the beginning of, we'll just place a bed here for your
That's
house building or whatever, you
that's
know?
has
exciting
Nintendo
and
just given up and
interesting.
they're just like, let's just give them dev tools. That's that. We're not giving them items anymore, just dev tools.
Well, as long as the dev tools are fun.
I mean, the Ultra Hand in Tears of the Kingdom is kind of the ultimate dev tool for a
Mm-hmm.
3D Zelda.
Or the ascend in Tears is just basically I love the fact they just gave Link like a Winnie the Pooh esque thing where he can just fly up through things.
All right. Well, we're talking about every Zelda game besides A Link to the Past right now, and there are two things I want to go over briefly before we shut it down for the day. I mean, this game does have a story. It really, I think the story is just finding the way to get to the next dungeon and doing the dungeon, but you do get story smatterings, uh, especially every time you rescue one of the seven maidens, the seventh of which is Zelda herself. But they give you sort of a piece of the story on what the Triforce slash Golden Power is. That it's that the Dark World was created from the wish of a thief named Ganondorf, who renamed himself Ganon the Dark King. Vaguely, in order to complete his wish, he has to defeat the hero, who is you, and you're descended from a line of heroes. Your uncle's okay at the end of the game. That was always a comfort to me. I always thought your uncle had a really raw deal at the beginning of this game. You don't even get to see what kind of enemy killed him, although it was
I don't
probably
think an enemy did kill him. I think he just hit his head when he fell down the hole.
really. Oh, that's even sadder.
I
I
mean,
figured that he was mobbed by like 3 blue knights or something.
in I think
Oh,
every manga adaptation, he is taken out by Aghanim. There are two different mangas, and I believe in both of them, he goes on his own and confronts Aghanim and is defeated by Aghanim, which
Oh,
is
that's
much
just
cooler.
overkill.
that
That is
is
just overkill.
I mean,
that's
maybe, but
better
you're
than
from
falling
the
down a well.
yes, but it's like you're supposed to be one of the descendants of the Knights of Hyrule who protected the sages when they were sealing away the Dark World, and it's like, so the idea is like, well, maybe your uncle thought he was the hero, right? Because the hero always comes from the line of the Knights of Hyrule, but he wasn't the hero and he failed, and so you take up as the last one.
He failed
Uh,
because he didn't bring his lantern, and
exactly, he left it at the house.
and it was dark in that well, and a couple of blue knights or Aghanim or something took him out, or maybe it was just the hard floor of the dungeon.
I think that's it. Like, I think it's funnier if he thinks he's the hero of legend and literally just falls down a hole, hits his head, and is knocked unconscious. And then he just wakes up like hours later and he's like, well, my nephew just saved the world? What? No, I'm the hero.
No, I do like the little bits of story that they throw in with the maidens, and the Game Boy Advance version is retranslated, right?
Mhm.
And I think is actually a little clearer on some of the points. They do make changes
Good,
like
because
this. Yeah,
it
it's a
does
little
seem a
confusing,
little weird.
but also they've changed it to make it fit a little more in line with the other Zelda games that had come since, right? Like the term
Mhm.
sages is not actually used in the original Link to the Past. They are wise men. And if we look at Zelda on a broader scheme and the timeline, not to go down the rabbit hole too much, it's like the sages that are referenced are not a bunch of old men. They are a Zora and a Kokiri and like there's a bunch of people, right, that are different races and just different, and they're not just
Well,
old
right,
men.
right, because it's, I mean, the sages in Ocarina, which predated this, were each of a different race almost.
Right.
They are a
Um,
diverse group.
But the other story note I wanted to mention that gets missed a lot nowadays when we replay the game is that this is actually when Zelda's like deeper lore, if we call it that, actually came into play. It's just in the instruction manual, which is true of a lot of games of this era, right? But Yoshiaki Koizumi decided that Zelda needed a backstory, and he wrote it in. And he wrote the story of the three golden goddesses, which didn't get portrayed in game until Ocarina of Time, but it's in the manual, written almost exactly the same. Uh, he wrote the story about how Aghanim came to help the kingdom because there was famine and tricked the king of Hyrule before Aghanim deposes the king of Hyrule, and how like it gives the backstory in more detail, both the creation of Hyrule and the Triforce, and also how Aghanim came to be where he was. And I
I like
always
that.
like that. I like that about old games. They have that stuff in the manual that you have to go hunting for.
I like the idea that there's a famine and they're just like, I don't know, for some reason someone keeps cutting down all the stalks of wheat throughout the entire kingdom. Everyone keeps cutting them down. Just links the cause of the famine, just cutting down all the grass.
That's why his uncle told him to stay home. It's like he's got the sword, everything is fine. He's getting out of here before Lincoln causes famine again.
Yeah, this is pre-ranch days, so I mean, we don't really see any farms or food in this game other than maybe that milk tavern.
Yes,
So,
there is a milk bar. Yeah.
so is all of the landscaping that we're doing really just crop destruction?
That's why there are no cows in this game. Links.
There are
If it,
chickens or cuckoos.
Okay.
well, I
And
mean,
to,
and the game punishes you if you attack those
Hmm.
too many times. But
This is
all
the
right, if
origin
we're
of that gag, right?
if we're yeah all right, if we're prognosticating like the great 1991 famine of Hyrule and about the true fate of Link's uncle from the first 10 seconds of the game, we're probably near the end of the episode. I mean, we all love this game. My favorite Zelda game is probably A Link Between Worlds, in part because it is such a fun reimagining slash reinterpretation slash new interpretation of this setting. I'm gonna play this game forever. I know I said this is probably my uh sixth or so time playing this game. There's gonna be more. I mean, I'm not gonna replay this game every year like Josh does, but there will be a time I want to play A Link to the Past, and there are many ways to do so, and I will do one of those because this game rules. And yeah, this is probably one of the more nakedly positive episodes of Retro Encounter we've ever done. But I mean, this is a 1991/92 game that 100% holds up at basically every level, except for goddamn Mothla, who can just die in a fire rod. As far as I care, yeah.
I think you're right. It's such a good game, and I mean the game does have so much life outside of the original gameplay. Like I mentioned, randomizers now, which is my favorite way to absorb. I love watching randomizer races. Um, they're so entertaining, uh, especially if you know the game really, really, really well. It's fascinating to watch where these items are and how the logic comes together. But also, there are ROM hacks and things out there that are based on this game that again have given it new life. Like Parallel Worlds was one of the very first fan hacks out there that got mass popularity, which is, they take this and they make it into a full scale Zelda game, essentially, a brand new one. So this game is remarkable for so many reasons. I just love it. It's so good. It still looks good. The pixel art is fantastic. It's so much fun to play. I know I wasn't complaining. I know when I said earlier, like there's so many items in this game that you don't need. You don't need them, but like a lot of them are just fun to play with. Uh, you get this. Oh, there's a force field comes out of this staff and
Yeah, yeah,
things like
you
that are
don't
just so
need the
much
Cane
fun.
of Burna or the Bombos medallion, but they're powerful and fun
Yeah, exactly.
and slightly hidden, so they're like just a fun reward for exploring that corner of the map a little bit more closely.
Can I steer people to a thing because we were talking a lot about it in this? If you are interested in like the dungeons things like this, Game Maker's Toolkit, the YouTube channel, has a great series called Boss Keys, which examines the dungeons of various Zelda games. And I think this one came out like 8 years ago at this point,
Yeah.
but it's
Very good
it's
series.
it's a very good series and super super interesting. So if you ever want to examine like how the dungeons work, Boss Keys is a great series to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna add. We were talking about randomizers. Like, my favorite way to do this game randomized is to mix it with Super Metroid.
Mm.
I love that dual randomizer. It's excellent. Um,
Ugh.
but yeah, like I can't add a whole lot, right? This is my favorite game of all time. Like I think I said before, it's the only reason I'm on the podcast in the first place. I wouldn't be doing video game website stuff. Probably wouldn't be a gamer at all if it wasn't for this game. And so that's part of why I replay it every year, right? It's sort of my core of what makes me a gamer. Uh, but no, I love it. I never get tired of it. Uh, it's hard to say anything bad about it. You know, I'm sure there's something wrong with it. It's a really glitchy mess, and the frame rate is bad when there's too many enemies on the screen.
Yeah, but that's true of like every Super Nintendo game.
We didn't really care about that much back then, but it was supposed to be a negative thing. So
That's
I'm
it.
docking a point. It's a 99 out of 100.
That's it, John. The current performance of the Switch is just an homage to the Super Nintendo when it has too many
Okay,
sprites on the screen.
the mechanical failures of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are really just an homage to Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
It's nostalgia.
Oh boy. Okay, now if we're using nostalgia to spin failures into positives, I think we're definitely done with the episode now. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us on one, possibly two episodes of A Link to the Past Appreciation Station. Because again, this is much less critical than I usually prefer podcasts to be. But A Link to the Past is so good, I frankly don't care. And next week we're going to talk about another game that I really like a lot, and that RPG Fan likes a lot, because I think our reviewer gave it a 97 or a 98. Next week we're doing an episode on Metaphor Refantasio, a spoiler cast episode for a game that came out in October of this year, but a full month was enough to get a bunch of people playing it. And we'll have a panel full of excited. What do I talk about this game without really spoiling it? Metaphor is great, and it's going to be a very interesting discussion next week. But we do have the rest of December planned out as well. After Metaphor, we're doing 2 episodes on Dragon Quest III, another game that has a non-linear exploratory design that holds up more than 30 years later. That game's even older than A Link to the Past, and it still plays very well. I'm playing it on the new HD 2D remaster, but I do know that one of the panelists is playing the original NES version, so that's going to be a very fun side-by-side discussion. We're doing 2 episodes on Dragon Quest III, and then right after those 2 episodes, we're doing our annual year in review episode, usually the least retro episode of Retro Encounter every given year, where we talk about our favorite games from the previous 12 months. And I haven't planned it out yet, but year in review is going to be episode 449, and one after that is a multiple of 50. I don't know what we're doing for episode 450 yet, but we'll always do something a little different, a little special, and I can confirm that's going to happen in early January. But well, you know what? I don't think we're finished picking the January game yet, so I'm going to leave that for next week for that reveal. Retro Encounter is not the only podcast on RPG Fan. There's also Random Encounter every 2 weeks, hosted usually by you, Jono.
Yeah, when's this going up? The 28th?
Yes.
Okay, in that case, yeah, so 25th. So last episode of Random Encounter, we would have been talking about The Rise of the Golden Idol, which is a sequel to Case of the Golden Idol, which was one of my favorite adventure mystery games over the last couple of years. It's unbelievably good. And the sequel is apparently, in many ways, living up to those expectations. So, yeah, we haven't recorded it yet, but I suspect it's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah, we're recording this a little bit early, so all of us can celebrate American Thanksgiving with our families that week. But I do have Rise of the Golden Idol ready to go, because Jono, you and I even podcasted about Case of the Golden Idol just a couple of months ago.
We did. It's so good.
That was my first time playing the game, and I was so impressed. So yeah, more Golden Idol is very welcome.
It's not just a great mystery game, but also the aesthetic of the game is so grotesque that you can't help but be impressed with just how ugly it is. But not like ugly in the sense like, wow, these graphics are really bad.
Save
like,
it for Random Encounter, dude. Save it for Random Encounter. Come on. In addition to Retro and Random Encounter, the RPG Fan Podcast Network also has Rhythm Encounter. That is our music show that goes on every other Monday, alternating with Random Encounter. But listeners, if you want to reach out to us or any of the podcasts, you can just find rpgfan.com, where we have podcast features, reviews, articles going up every single day in addition to podcast episodes. RPG Fan is also on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitch, YouTube, and Discord, always called either RPG Fan or RPG Fancom. If you want to reach out to this podcast directly, you can email retro@rpgfan.com. But my favorite way for you to interact with RPG Fan is to pay us. If you go to rpgfan.com/shop, you can find 2 storefronts, one hosted by TeePublic with RPG Fan apparel and accessories, and a second one hosted by Hyperplay RPG, where you can buy the RPG Fan Reviews Collection, which is a tome of over 300 pages of RPG Fan reviews from years recent and in bygone past. So please listen to our podcasts anywhere you listen to podcasts. Visit our websites and social media sites in any way you can, and continue to support RPG Fan. But if you want to support us or interact with us outside of the usual RPG Fan channels, let's tell you, the listeners, how to find us, the panelists, starting with you, Jono.
Yeah, you can find me you can send me a message to jlogan@rpgfan.com. And like many people recently, I've joined Blue Sky, and it's at jonologan.blue. bsky.social. Yeah, I'm actually really enjoying Blue Sky. It reminds me of Twitter in like 2014, which is when Twitter was actually kind of fun. So yeah, cool site. Glad I joined.
I've been on Blue Sky for a while. I was one of the first 400,000 users or something, and it really is basically old Twitter. The only thing it needs is scheduled tweets or scheduled skeets, because
Mm.
I used to I like planning out drafts and having things post throughout the day instead of all at once. But Josh, whether it's planning out your skeets or not, how can listeners find you online?
I also have revived my Blue Sky account that I abandoned for about a year. So I am Watcher Joshua on Blue Sky. I'm also on Threads with the same username.
And listeners, you've heard me say this dozens of times over the years. I am. You can find me on the internet in several ways, but the easiest are either to go to Blue Sky, Instagram, or RPG Fans Discord. On all three places, I am at Evoker for Dogs. You know what? I am docking another point off of A Link to the Past. There's no dogs or cats in this one, right?
I think that's true.
I think you're right.
69 out of 100, literally unplayable. Thank you, good night, and good luck.